Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's 2 p.m., so let's get this show on the road. Welcome, and hope you guys are having a great Tuesday so far. This is the first ever iPrice webinar, so hope you guys are super excited. We definitely are as well from our side. We're preparing a lot for this webinar. And the topic today is going to be on how to kickstart your career in e-commerce for anyone out there that's interested in maybe learning a little bit more about e-commerce and what are some ways that they can get started and really stand out in the application process. But first, let's start with some introductions so you know who's going to be talking to you during this space. So if you go to the next slide, you can see here are your hosts. It's basically the talent acquisition team here at iPrice. I'm the talent acquisition manager. And I also have Alyssa and Amin, who are our talent acquisition executives. So we've been around the block. We've seen a lot of different applications in our time, and we're super excited to give you some tips and tricks and secrets in order to help you as you start to navigate the e-commerce landscape and find your first starting point. You might also be wondering, if you're new, what is iPrice and what do we even do? If you're new to iPrice, you can think of us as a price comparison platform. What do I mean by that? Well, if you go to the next slide, let's say that one day you're sitting around and you're thinking, quarantine has been really boring. I really need something to level up my entertainment experience. Oh, I know, let me get a new PlayStation. But you might be wondering, where can I actually get that PlayStation for a really good price? Naturally, I think everyone in this day and age, they usually turn to Google first in order to find that. So you might type in, looking for a PlayStation, good price, etc. And potentially even maybe the second or third result on Google will be to this little website called iPrice. Curious, you click on it and it takes you to the iPrice website where you get to see the PlayStation in question that you've been looking for. And as you scroll down, you can even see different options of where you can buy it, whether it's Shopee, Lazada, or even other websites. And you can even compare very easily, how much it costs, what the quality is, the satisfaction rate, and any other things that you have that you want to know a little bit more about before actually purchasing it for yourself. So that's essentially what we do at iPrice. We are a product discovery website. We help you to better compare between prices across all the different e-commerce players out there. And also we provide coupons so that way we can make your e-commerce experience even more affordable, which is super helpful, especially during these MCO times. But enough about that. Now that we know who is going to be presenting and also what iPrice is, it's time to actually dive into the webinar itself. So what are we going to cover today? We have three main objectives for you guys. First of all, we'll tell you a little bit more about why you should even consider starting your career in e-commerce and what about it makes it such a exciting and high potential industry for you to get involved with. Then we'll also give you some tips about how to score your first internship in e-commerce. Obviously, we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the internship side, only because we're hiring mostly for internships right now at iPrice, but you can still apply some of these tips to entry-level jobs or other positions as well, if you like. And then at the end, we will have a panel Q&A, where we'll even invite some of our hiring managers across some of the different departments in iPrice to answer some of the questions that you guys have submitted, and also just talk in general about what it's like working in e-commerce and also what you can do in order to stand out in the application process. So with that, let's get started. First off with why e-commerce? What makes it so special? Well, obviously, I think 2020 has been a very interesting year for us all. And it's definitely not been without its challenges. Every time you look at the news, not only do you see more devastating news about the pandemic, but also you've probably heard that there are so many economic consequences of the pandemic as well. So many people are having companies that are doing layoffs, or maybe companies aren't even really hiring anymore. And that can cause a lot of uncertainty when you're starting to look out in the job landscape and try to figure out where you can even apply to, right? But the good news is not all industries have suffered, huge losses because of the pandemic. In actuality, some have even used the pandemic as an opportunity for rapid growth. For example, in the case of the online media industry or the food delivery service, and in particular, the e-commerce industry as well in Southeast Asia. In fact, in Southeast Asia, the e-commerce industry grew by 63% in 2020 alone, ending the year being worth close to 62 billion US dollars. And over the next 5 years, that worth is expected to triple, being close to almost 172 billion US dollars by 2025. So it's an industry that has rapid growth potential, a very long-term sustainability, and it's a great place to sort of get started if you're looking for a more long-term career growth. And if you're wondering, well, okay, in e-commerce sounds great, but where can I actually start? Like, what are the career opportunities out there for me? Obviously, there are a lot of different roles out there for you. I think, regardless of what you studied or majored in university, you can find something for you. But the three areas that most e-commerce players are rapidly hiring for and have a really high demand for are, first of all, IT and tech. I think that's very self-explanatory. Most places are always looking for more tech developers, software engineers, or whatever else have you. So that's a really key area. There's also digital marketing and in particular SEO. A lot of e-commerce players rely heavily on SEO in order to drive more traffic to their website. So if you have some SEO skills, that'll definitely make you especially attractive. And last but not least, there's business intelligence and data analytics. As these e-commerce players start to continue to grow, they want to make sure that they're growing in a very efficient and effective way. So they're relying more and more on big data and data science in order to inform their strategic decisions. So either of these three areas will probably set you up for a lot of success if you want to get started in the e-commerce landscape. But now that you know a little bit more about the career opportunities, you might be thinking, so then where do I get started? And for sure, you can apply directly for a lot of e-commerce companies, but sometimes it's good to get started with an internship first. The reason being is obviously an internship will help you get your foot in the door, so you can start to build those connections and start to build those experiences as well that you can put on your CV. It also gives you a chance to even test out if you like working in the e-commerce industry and if it's the right fit for you. And lastly, it gives you that chance to put to practice all those skills and the knowledge that you learned in university, so that way you can practice it a little bit more and start to refine your skills. Now that you know a little bit more about why you should go into e-commerce, let's actually give it off to Amin and Alyssa so they can give you some more tips on how you can stand out, especially if you're wanting to apply for an internship in e-commerce. So Amin, you want to take it away?
All right. Thank you, Katie. I hope you guys can hear me. So I'll be taking over on the next slide here on how to score an internship in e-commerce. I believe if you do make your application, we have around 7 easy tips on how to help you stand out from the crowd, meaning that you'll be able to, outrun other people's and other application. So let's jump straight to it. So the first tip that we have for you here is actually pretty simple. Always tailor your CVs or your resumes according to what you are applying to. So it is always a good idea to have targeted CVs for the role that you're eyeing to, because sometimes recruiters or HR personnels on average view maybe somewhere around hundreds or even thousands of CVs at one time, right? So actually, to help recruiters and HR to do this, we commonly use a system called ATS, or what is commonly known as applicant tracking system. This allows HR personnel and recruiters to identify suitable candidates using keywords. So we filter CVs according to keywords and we kind of extract them. So this will allow us to kind of get the necessary CVs and resumes that we want for a particular role. So there's a lot of things where people say, what is the best CV format out there, right? Well, it's actually kind of subjective, but it's pretty important that you cover a few important details like we summarize here. If you can see on the right side, make sure to include your name, summary, contact information. Also, if you're applying for internship, include your internship duration and also provide your notice period if you're applying for a full-time position. So for the third point here, we have good keywords. So this applies to whatever field you're targeting to. If you are applying for a role that requires SEO as one of the main skills and you do possess that skill, make sure to include that in your CV so our applicant tracking system can track it. So this will allow you to be highlighted among um, other applicants. So this also apply to other roles such as IT or operations, be it whatever it is. So also fourth point, again, tailored to applied role, um, take into consideration of logistics and relocation. Um, Make sure to include if you're willing to relocate or not, if you're applying to somewhere outside of your area, and make sure to not put in a native language as much as possible because sometimes not everyone, not every recruiter can read native language. So use English as much as possible. Highlight your relevant experience in your CVs, provide references, and it would also be very helpful if you can provide us an expected range for your monetary compensation that you are seeking for. So on the left side here, you can actually see an example of a CV for a categorization intern that applied to our vacancies before. We thought that this is a good example of a CV that includes good keywords. You might not be able to see it, but the candidate puts SEO and some other relevant keywords inside. She also tailored the CV for categorization intern specifically. Okay, so moving on to the next tip, also pretty simple. This might sound trivial for some of you, but first impression will give you an edge. So put an effort into answering application question. Some companies have application forms, and these forms can cover a variety of questions ranging from logistics and job specific questions. So when answering these questions, be very clear about your maybe if they ask you about the duration of internship, be very clear about that. Give out accurate details, give out um, good answers. Be sure to answer the pre-screening question properly. So in case that you have skill testing questions or maybe a writing test that you need to do, be sure to take your time, take a step back and kind of, think through the questions and answer it properly. So the next slide, we have a sample of answer that we extracted from our own career page and application form to give you an example of what is a good answer and what is not really recommended. So as you can see here in the next slide, both is actually the same question, but candidate, let's just say candidate Green answered this question precisely, taking into consideration of the situation and making sure that his answers are very um, uh, accommodating to uh, whatever is needed in this question. But on the second candidate, let's say that this is candidate Red. The way that this candidate actually answer this question is not really recommended. It doesn't reflect that he is serious in his application. So this gives us kind of a first impression on whether we want to consider moving forward with this candidate or not, right? So if you answer like this, most probably we won't even be considering your application because we have the impression that you don't take it seriously. Um, Next tip. So tip 3 is prepare in advance for your interview. So research the company background of a company that you're applying to, study about the company background, their structure, their values. So this will give impression on how interested you are to join the company because you kind of learned of what the structure of their company are and how they're doing and what is the culture like. And it is also a good idea to research a commonly asked question, or maybe one would put it as a frequently asked question. So this will ultimately help avoid yourself from being caught off guard too much. So you have time to prepare your script or some kind of basic answers to questions that people may ask again and again. So in the next slide, we have sample of questions that you may be asked in your future interviews, or if you have been asked in your previous interviews, right? Among the most notorious and famous questions out there on how to start an interview is basically, can you briefly introduce yourself? So maybe you've been in this situation, right? So it's always a good idea to have some kind of framework or some kind of thought process on what you want to cover during your introduction and what you want to answer if you are asked these kind of questions. So there's a lot of questions here that you can expect people to ask. Maybe what is your work aspirations? What makes you a great team player? Um, if you have a disagreement or something. So basically, always prepare yourself for our next question, and you'll be able to go through smoothly. And so the last tip from me before I pass to Alyssa is pretty related to tip 3. Practice your elevator pitch, right? So when pitching yourself to hiring managers or panels, ideally what we recommend here is to go no longer than 5 minutes, because sometimes when you go longer than that, we kind of lost where we kind of lost the main point, and it's not really recommended. It's a subjective topic, right? You can choose to have a shorter or longer elevator pitch, but ideally, we don't want you to ramble too long either. And what you want to cover here is to cover what your goals are and make sure that you exhibit positive energy. And then, in terms of summary of experience, that may or might not be necessary depending on your preferences or depending on how you want to approach the application. So know your worth, but don't feel the need to oversell yourself. So in my personal opinion, the best elevator pitch is somewhere around 60 to 120 seconds. Just summarize a few things about you, personalize it so it shows off your personality, and make sure to connect the elevator pitch on why you want to work at the company in particular. So if I were to give an example right now, right, if I were to pitch myself, um, okay, let's say just an example. So my name is Amin. Hi everyone. So I help scale organization through talent acquisition and employee branding efforts like sourcing, recruiting talents, and creating employer brand related contents. I have been working in iPrice for around a year and a half, focusing on growing my skills. And I think now I'm ready. I'm ready to take a leap to the next stage. I happened to stumble upon your vacancy through LinkedIn, and I thought that my skills in talent management could be an asset to your company. So something that sounds like that, right? So pretty simple. Cover your goals, cover why you want to work with them, brief summary about yourself, and that's pretty much it from me. Next, how about I pass this to Alyssa?
Okay, thanks, Amin. So, hi everyone. So, moving on to tip five, we have ask questions about the process and the job. So, when you're during your interview session, you have to keep in mind that the interviewer is still making an impression of you, even though it's towards the end and it's your turn to ask the questions. Um, it's the recruiter is judging you based on the questions that you ask if you are really considering this role or not. So here are a few tips on what to ask and what to avoid. So make sure to inquire details that are not easily found and that shows your interest. So for example, how is the team structure and to whom will I be reporting to? So that you get an insight as to how the team already is in the company and how you yourself will be put in that team and helping out that team as well. And the next question is why did your company choose this certain value as one of your values in the company? So companies usually put their values on their website. However, they don't go into too much detail as to why those are their values. So if you ask those questions, it will also give you an insight into how they came up with those questions and why they chose those specific ones. And lastly is why did you as the recruiter choose to work here? So you can ask the recruiter why did you choose to work here or what makes you enjoy working here in iPrice, let's say. So it kind of throws it back to the recruiter to reflect on the company culture and what they enjoy about the company, which helps you gain more insight as well as to how it will be as an employee in the company. And then in terms of types of questions to avoid, so make sure to not ask questions that you're already able to find online, such as location of the office, what is the role about. So that's basically the job description that already entails what the role is about. And lastly, what does the company do? So as a candidate, we always expect the candidate to already have a basic knowledge on what the company does. So if you ask those types of questions, it shows that you did not come into the interview prepared and you're not really serious about the job role in this company. The next one is also to not ask about other roles. So I've had cases where the candidate kind of asked a role from a different department. And it kind of shows that as a recruiter, you spent this half an hour with the candidate asking questions to see their interest and their passion in a specific role, and to see they're a good fit for that role. And then towards the end, they're asking you about another role, which shows that their interest is not really leaning towards anywhere and they just want to find a placement in a company. So it kind of throws off the interview as well. And then kind of makes you land onto the not so good candidate as well. So be sure to avoid those kind of questions. Moving on to tip six. So when to practice your professionalism in your communication. So there's two ways to communicate with a recruiter. So the first one is written, which is email, and then verbal with the interview. So your first way of communication is always through email, right? So make sure when you're writing an email that it's a proper email that's being sent out. So you have to meet these 4 points. So the subject title, which is what the email is about, the introduction. Let's say you've never spoken to this recruiter before and you want to ask about a job application. So make sure to just address it as dear sir slash madam or dear miss slash mister if you're not sure about their names yet. And then go into the body. So the context of the email, what is it you are reaching out to them for? So if you're reaching out for an internship application, you saw an opening and you want to apply. So make sure to state a small, brief introduction to yourself, like your name. Are you in university? What course are you doing? And what job role are you interested in their company? And then attach your CV as well and state your internship duration. And then make sure to always have a closing. So you can just put best regards and then your name. And then in bracket, you can also include how you would like to be addressed so that moving forward, when you have that back and forth communication with the recruiter, they know how to refer to you. And then next up is also to check on your spellings and your grammar. So if you're someone that's not really confident in your grammar and you're kind of shy to ask people to read your email before sending it out, you can actually just use the tool Grammarly. It's free. You can just download it online. It's a really easy tool to use, and it will really help you out if you're just only starting to send out a lot of emails and you want it to be as professional as it can be. So moving on to verbal. So during the interview, there have been cases where the candidate comes into the interview and right off the bat, when it comes to addressing the interviewer, they come out with the wrong name. So it's understandable that candidates kind of have multiple interviews probably in a week. So sometimes it can be jumbled up. So before the interview, be sure to like prepare yourself, know who you're being interviewed by, which company are you interviewing. So address them correctly and be respectful when you're speaking to that person. Don't use slangs or overly casual language. Also watch your tones, because a lot of times when we're speaking to the interview, we kind of hear them have a very monotone or very casual tone, and it kind of seems like they're not really interested in being in the call, or they're not really interested in the role, so they come off very monotone and uninterested. So that also throws off the interviewer as well. So just be mindful of those things. And next up to tip 7, so make sure to follow up. So as recruiters, as Amin has mentioned, right, we have about 100 to 1,000 applicants. So we're constantly speaking to candidates day after day. So sometimes when it comes to following up with candidates, it takes us some time to actually follow up because we have so many people to reach out to. So don't be afraid to always follow up with the recruiter to kind of remind them that you want an update regarding your application, and that you're still interested in your application as well. Um, Also, sometimes HR departments, we do opt to have a phone call with the candidate, but these phone calls are always scheduled and informed on both sides. So be sure that just because you have their mobile number, you just don't call them spontaneously, because it kind of catches them off guard and puts them on the spot. So be sure to follow up via email only to kind of give them time to look at your application process, speak to the hiring manager, get the full update for you before reaching out to you again. So yeah, and then we have 3 situations here. So the first one is accepting an offer. So let's say a company does offer you a role and you want to accept. Be sure to prepare your internship documents for the HR. So your acceptance form that you need them to fill up, your internship letter that you need to provide, and then also make sure when you're sending these out via email that you also include the timeline as to when you need this acceptance form filled out by to send to your university, just so it gives the HR a heads up not to put it off any longer. And then also state your internship duration so that when we are drafting out the contract for you, we kind of do it more smoothly and there's no errors in any of the starting date and the end date. Next, the situation is if you were rejected. So most of the time you will be rejected the first few times, right? So be sure to always ask feedback from the recruiter, because you can always take this as a lesson to learn. So make sure to take notes from each interview and kind of see what were these mistakes made, what questions went well, what didn't go well, and how to improve on in the future. Take them as practices to kind of build your confidence in speaking to other people, and also your confidence when it comes to um, going for interviews, because your internship is a good practice for you when you move on to finding a full-time position as well. And then lastly, we have rejecting an offer. So let's say company A offers you a role and you want to accept, right? But you are still in the interview process for company B, C, and D. So make sure to still follow up with them, let them know that I've already found a placement. Thank you so much for your time. And this kind of builds a good relationship with the recruiters so that in the future you can still always go back to them if you're looking for other job opportunities in the future. If you're looking for full-time positions as well, you can always refer back to them because you had a good relationship and you ended it off on a positive note. And also, if you weren't able to work with them yet, you can still follow them on LinkedIn, kind of build your connection from there, and who knows, in the future it might help you out as well. So yeah, those are the few tips that we have prepared for you guys. I hope that helps you out in your internship search, and that it will kind of boost your confidence to keep going, even though there are mistakes along the way. It's totally understandable. So now moving on to the fun part, which is the panel discussion. So we have four experienced team members that are joining us to give us an insight as to their own departments, and kind of give us an insight into what they look for in interns as well. So a little introduction to our panels. We have Salahin, who is the senior QA engineer. So he has been in the IT industry for over 14 years, and he just transitioned to an e-commerce company here in iPrice for 1 year. And then we have Alicia as well, who is the team lead in coupons, who has been with us for over 4 years. And then we have Putri over here, who has been with iPrice for over 5 years, and she's currently the team lead in categorization. And last but not least, we have Chris, who is our team lead in campaign. She has over 3 years in e-commerce, as well as 4+ years in digital marketing. So I'll let Amin speak to the panels and also answer your questions as well.
Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, so we have now arrived to the um, panel discussion session. So we have quite a bunch of experienced people here with me today. So we have Salihin, we have Putri, we have Alicia and Chris. So thank you for tuning in, guys. So when talking about e-commerce, right? E-commerce is such a broad topic, and there are a lot of things to cover. But for the purpose of today's discussion, we wanted to ask a few really important questions for you guys. So why don't we just kickstart with the first question that we have. So along these discussion session, we have actually, prior to this, we have sent out a Microsoft form to people who wanted to join the session. So we have received quite a few questions, and then we will also be addressing them today. But to kickstart things, so the first thing we'd like to know is why did you start in e-commerce, right? So what makes you want to start in e-commerce? So I think among the best person to kind of answer this question is probably maybe Chris. Would you like to start?
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Awesome. Thanks for giving me opportunity to share more about it. So in terms of how did I started come to the e-commerce was I studied back overseas. So during that time I had a part of the organization in the uni where it's active career seeking group. So in that session there was a panel talking about what are the next industry in the next 5 to 10 years. So during that time was it's about digital marketing. So I was a business graduate. I was thinking, what can I do? It must be confusing when we just graduated. What can I do? Right? What can I start with? So one of the industry and the job scope that I'm interested in is digital marketing. So and digital marketing, as been mentioned by earlier in these sessions, part of it is in the commerce is the way to go. So I've back then was like, okay, I'm telling myself I have to start to join e-commerce, and I come back and can flew to Kuala Lumpur. It's like there's an opportunity in iPrice, and definitely joining in, and I didn't regret ever since. I learned a lot. That's it from me.
Okay, so definitely interesting, right? So because you took the leap and the risk of relocating to Malaysia because you wanted to be in this field. Aside from that, is there any panel that want to kind of take on this question? Maybe Putri, you've been smiling for a while there. Would you like to take on this question?
Yes, I hope you can hear me clearly. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Putri. Yeah, thanks for the question, Amin. But yeah, basically the reasons why I started this e-commerce, I joined it like 5 years ago. I think, as Chris mentioned, it was like one of the industry that is fastest growing. For me, what it means that they need a lot of people, so there's more job opportunities. So that's number one. And number two is that it's an industry that is very open to learning. I'm very big on learning. I think that whatever works last year for us in terms of process, it might not be work today. So it's like always, what else next, right? So basically, those are the two areas that why that I started to join e-commerce in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been such a long time for you. It's been 5 years, and I think in your profile it has also been stated that you've grown to a team lead, and now you are doing coaching for the teams here in iPrice, right? Um, so moving on to address more on the topic that we have here, because this webinar is kind of focused for interns. So we've been getting a lot of questions around this in particular. So we'd like to know what are the specific requirements you are looking for in your respective departments. So I think we can give a chance to Salihin and Alicia to answer these questions. So what would you say about this, Salihin, coming from the tech department yourself? What are you actually looking for your interns?
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Salihin, so I'm with the tech departments. So for the tech department, what I'm basically looking for is what can you contribute to us? So are you good in documentations or maybe reporting parts of things? Are you good in logging a bugs, or are you good in finding the smallest details that can improve our applications, those kind of things? Or maybe you are having more skills in the scriptings. Can you do automations, or can you maybe design a good UI? So what I'm looking for in an intern is usually what are the important things that they can contribute to us. And then from there, we can explore about their passions in the technologies. What are the technologies that they are passionate about? Do they do they have interest in open source technologies or mobile applications or web applications? What are these? And on top of that, I think the other points is the ability of the interns or the candidates to communicate with us their ideas. Can they basically communicate to us their passions on in the technologies, and also their contributions that they can give to us? So yeah, basically that's some of the specific requirements that I'm looking for my departments.
Yeah, definitely interesting here, because if we recall Katie mentioning before at the start of the webinar, um, among the top vacancies or opportunities that we have in e-commerce is mostly, of course, ITs, right? So uh, it is actually important for people who study IT to polish your skills. So guys, make sure to work on personal projects and be sure to probably increase your technical skills, because it is really, really in demand right now. So for Alicia, so you are from operations, coupons operations. So in terms of that department or that environment, what are you looking for your interns?
Hi, thanks, Amin, for the question. So in my department, the coupons ops team, in specific, what I am looking for is someone with attention to detail, because we mainly do content optimization on the pages. So the first look on your CV is already so important to me, because if your language is not on par with what we want, you will not be selected. So be very careful with how you present your CV. Use Grammarly as suggested. Not only that, but a basic understanding of SEO is also important. You don't need to go into detail on what SEO, how the tools work, but just to get the basic understanding, it's good enough. I mean, I also understand that interns usually you do not possess the in-depth understanding, but just to do your research before coming, that is beautiful for me. That means that you are hungry for the role, you've done your research and you're prepared, and that would just blow me away knowing that you have the drive for that role. And so basic SEO, understanding language. When I'm interviewing you, you need to be very composed, very well structured. How you present yourself is a reflection to who you are. So I will also take that into account. So language and SEO from me. Thanks, Amin.
All right, thank you, Alicia. So basically, yes, I would admit that language is pretty important because currently we are in this era, online era, and a lot of companies are basically using English as their main communication language, right? So, all right, so we also have the most important question, I think one of the most important question that we have for today, which is what makes an intern a must hire for you? So if I may ask the panels here today, who would like to take on this question?
Yeah, I can take this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
up to you.
Basically, my department is actually from operations, right? So basically, that for an intern, that what we're looking for is we understand that the applicants may not have working experience prior before, and it's understandable. So usually, what I'm looking at is someone having a nice GPA is nice, but I think those that are actually having working experience in a team, in a group, this could be in community, it could be volunteer. Usually, those that are actually updating their extracurricular section, these are the people that then have higher chances for me to get callback. What I'm looking for is those people that actually have, as Salahin also mentioned before, the communication skills, the problem solving, how to work as a team. So I think those are actually one thing that I tend to look most often for interns is actually the sections of extracurricular. Aside from their study, what do they do actually from their studying? So maybe that's one tips actually for everyone here that interested in internship. So you could also update the section. So basically for my side is both EQ and IQ if possible, those experience in working as a team.
Definitely. It is also need to be noted that a lot of companies and growing companies around the world right now have a pretty diverse composition. So it's always important for candidates to be able to work within a team comprised of maybe someone from different backgrounds. And so make sure to get involved in group activities, familiarize yourself with the value of teamwork. So it will be very useful for you guys in your career. So any other panels who want to take up this question before we move on?
Maybe I can take quickly on this. As I said earlier on, some of the specific requirements is what can you contribute to the company or to the roles that you are applying for. So what makes an intern a must hire, at least for me, is if you can prove what you says you can. So if you say you list some specific skills in your CV, be prepared that you can prove it during the interviews. So if you can show to the interviewers with the confidence that, let's say you put a Python skill as one of the programming language that you know, in the interview, I will basically ask you the questions about the skills, the Python language that you know as example. So if you can prove that to the interviewer, you have a higher chance that you as a candidate will be hireable to the interviewers. And also you can show to the interviewer what are the areas that you want to grow into. So if you know that you want to be a software developers, maybe shows some passions or interests that, hey, I want to be working in the I want to grow from an interns to a full-time software developers. And if you can prove that, yeah, that is what makes an intern a must hire for me.
Yeah, thank you, Salihan, for that. I would say I would definitely agree. because what we want is not someone who can only talk, but prove that the skills that they've listed in the CV is actually true, right? Because someone can rate their
Correct.
Excel skills 95%, and we will be sure to kind of test whether 95% is really the truth. So we have 15 minutes left, and we've actually collected a few questions from the respondents through our Microsoft form here. So I have a few questions from the students and people who are looking forward to look for opportunities in e-commerce. So I hope you guys will be open to answer them. So the first question that we have here is from a student called Lubna. I think the question is, what skills can make someone unique who wants to transition from the media industry into e-commerce? So I think on top of my head, maybe Chris is the best person to answer this question. So what do you think, Chris?
Mm-hmm. I guess thanks for sharing. This is a good point. Actually, a lot of my previous interns are actually media students. So I guess the thinking process that you have been through is that now you're a media student. What kind of skills that is on your hand, right? For example, as a media, you're great in copywriting, so you're great in creating content. You're familiar in the project creation out of it, right? So there's two skills already: project management and also the content creations. And then the next one is on the it's more on the connections, right? As we know, some of you who've been to the journalistic or onto media university, you have connections has been built from your final year project, stuff like that. So these are the three skills that I saw that are quite unique that came from here. So firstly, talking about your content creations, talking about the content creations, it could be different. Look at what you are great at. So for example, if you're really great in content writing because you're passionate about journalistic back in your uni, so you actually can use that for applying for a lot of jobs, such as in my department, we can have it as well. We do use copywriting in our social media, in our email platforms. In the same time, copywriting also unlock you more access to also in the SEO part, like like Alicia's team, if you're really great at it. So that is two options that you can go to with if you're really great in content creations, right? And then the second one is on the project management. This is something that I guess is very unique that I really look forward to into my team. So in a campaign team, we are basically the 360 digital marketing activities aside from the search. So a lot of projects that we have to run for our e-commerce partners. So and we handling 7 countries at the same time. So having a great project management, as you guys know, media can be very hectic. If you get used to that, that's actually a really good point for you to join in. So this is some of leverage that you could look into as well. And then the third one is on the connections, right? So we have a content marketing team in iPrice. So they are in part of the link building SEO part, where they're using the PR as a strategist to actually connect with medias and then come out with a great content. Like at the same time, you're also great in the content planning and also project management, right? Such a really great place that you can look into. So again, look into what you're good at, examine what you're great at, and also another media graduate such as a multimedia, right? It's like, I'm a multimedia. What can I do? Multimedia, it could be a designer. So you could be a different version of graphic designer. You can also join into various, like been mentioned, is IT and digital marketing is a big thing. So we have something called UI and UX designer. So you can look into that. And if you're really passionate about it, how to improve the website, how to improve the app, and so forth and so on, this is something that you can look into as well. Kind of role of internship that you can touch into. In the same time, for example, in my team, we also have campaign designer, where we in touch with all the placements, all the banners, all the emails, social media. If you are interested in developing all these areas, is something that you can look into as well as a marketing designers. So I guess that's the 5 unique skills, and where you probably what kind of a internship role that you can tap into if you're a media graduate. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, there's a lot of transferable skills from if you specialize in marketing, like Chris said, there's a lot of transferable skills you can bring forward to e-commerce because it's pretty flexible and it's a new industry too in Southeast Asia. So most probably you'll be able to find something that is your core strength and transfer it when you move to e-commerce. So among the other interesting questions that we receive here previously is also what is the best part of working at e-commerce? So it's from one of our colleagues. So may I ask if one of you would like to tackle on this question? Maybe Alicia, if you'd like to address this.
Okay, thanks Akbar for the question. So the best part of working in e-commerce personally for me is the flexibility it comes with. I've worked in a corporate job, I've worked in a startup, and people working in an e-commerce industry, they're more open to accepting ideas, they receive feedback better. So the people that you work with just makes coming to work your life easier, right? Coming to work much more joyful. So the best part also during the Q4 or where the big sale is happening 10 10 11 11 12 12, it's just all the big players are also hustling, and all the e-commerce players, the marketplaces, we're hustling during that quarter, and it's just you can feel the spirit of everyone striving hard to work and to get that revenue. It's just you need to experience it firsthand to understand it's the drive, the hunger to work for the e-commerce during that period. So for me, I like that. That's the best part for me, because every time it's Q4, we're like on a race, like ready, start, go. We can do this. So that's also what I like about working in e-commerce. Everyone's nodding. They're like, yeah, Q4. So it's our goal for the year. And then also e-commerce technically it is the fastest section that is growing in SEA too. So there's so many opportunities waiting to be tapped here. I mean, during COVID situation, we saw a rise of online shoppers, and it's like this is the best industry to be in, especially during this situation. So there's a lot of opportunities waiting out there. There's some comparing to other industries, I think e-commerce is booming in SEA. So it is the best industry to be in, basically. So yeah, why it's the best industry to work in, it's because of all that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. I mean, this could easily be supported with Katie's presentation earlier today. I mean, it is stated that it is estimated that the growth of our e-commerce industry amounts to 62 billion alone on 2020. So that was quite a lot, right? And it is expected to triple in the next 3 years. So e-commerce is certainly booming in Southeast Asia. So we'd like to probably close the discussion. We still have a few minutes here, so we'd like to close the discussion here with one of the most interesting question that we received. So it's also from a student, I think from Indonesia. So the question is, if we've never had any experience in e-commerce, where and how do we start from to gain direct knowledge about the industry? So this is from Evelyn Setiawan. Thank you for the questions, Evelyn. So I think I'd like to see on how Salehin view this, right? Because you kind of transition into e-commerce from other industry. So how was the journey for you yourself, and what do you have to say in response to this question then?
Okay, so I transitioned from a financial and banking industry before. So more or less one commonality between the e-commerce and financial, is money. So I started in e-commerce to see how actually people buy and sell stuff online without meeting with the customers. So what I do when I started with the e-commerce is actually just to observe how the industry actually works. I started to be involved in the industry as a user myself. So I buy something online and I see what are the user journey that as a user you need to go through just to buy something online. And then from my own observation and my own involvement on that, I see what can be improved more in the industries. So let's say this is taking too long for me to just buy something simple, or there's too much items in the catalogs that I don't know which one that I should choose. So I started to have ideas on what makes the e-commerce ticks, and basically what makes the users or the audience or the customers itself ticks, um, and be interested in what they want to buy from you online. So maybe a shameless plug. If you ask me where should I start with iPrice, because in iPrice we build the web applications to compare a lot of products, and we show the most interesting products to the users and see how your own user journeys can be. And then from there, you maybe have an idea of, okay, this e-commerce user journey maybe can be simplified, or maybe this can be done in a different way. So from there, you may have some ideas on how you can start to be in the industries, and then you can maybe research more on how to implement your ideas that you have. But I think as a first step, observe how it works, be involved with it, and see where it takes you. So I think, yeah, that's my suggestions.
Yeah, pretty cool, Salihin. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, yeah, I mean, pretty interesting. Get your ideas, do your own research, right? And like we can simplify it in a few words. If you want to be involved in e-commerce, see if you have any transferable skills. Do your research on where your skills can be put into use. If you are a tech student or if you are a tech enthusiast, then probably dive into software development, or maybe UI UX or whatever is related to IT in e-commerce. And if you are into leading a team, or maybe someone who is more interested in operational day-to-day tasks, probably dive into a lot of marketings that needed operational manpower, right? So interesting also that Salihin mentioned that why don't we start in iPrice, right? So in correlation to that, actually, I'd like to share that if you have any interest in, joining iPrice as part of our organization, there's a few opportunities here that we have. Oh, okay. Let me try. Yeah. So we are actually actively. Oh, I'm sorry. The slide didn't work properly, but I think you guys would be able to see it. So we are actively hiring for a few internship roles right now. So we have campaign design intern, categorization intern, English speaker. So you'll most probably be able to put through yourself in categorization team. In campaign design, you'll be able to meet Chris. And then we have content writer intern for Thailand. I'm sorry. Did the question hinder the view? Okay, I'm sorry. Just fix that. Then we have coupon operation intern, English speaker. So this is an opportunity to work under Alicia. And we also have marketing intern for English speaker. So there's also a few full-time open opportunities that we have. You guys are, of course, welcome to visit our career page. We can see here, let me just zoom that in. You can see our career page here, iPrice Group, career, And then if you want to reach out to me or the TA team or the recruitment team here in iPrice, this is the email that you can reach out to. So aside from that, I would like to thank you guys for tuning in to our first live webinar. I hope the sharing session that we have today is somewhat useful or somewhat beneficial for you. If you have further questions and if you have recommendation on what the next topic of the webinar should be, feel free to reach out to any and either of us through our LinkedIn page, or maybe reach out to us through either email as stated before. So aside from that, so this is Amin here, signing off for everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you guys next time and have a great day ahead. Goodbye.